Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council, and to the public. Thank you for coming out this evening. In Proverbs 29 and 18, it said, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I believe our City Council for the last several years has been talking about a vision for our community. Last week, we had a visit from our governor, Governor McCrory. And while visiting, Governor McCrory made a statement about the center city, the downtown. And while he was here, Governor McCrory said, when your center city or any part of your city has blight and decay, it sends a signal that there's not a future. The governor also stated that an area sending this signal makes it difficult for him to recruit new industry to that community. For the past several years, working with the council, we've talked about the need to revitalize our center city. We told you that the center city can either kill a deal or seal a deal. Fortunately, the work that has been done in our downtown area, we're not killing deals right now. But in order to attract people to your community, you want to have a vibrant center city. And if you don't believe that, look around the state of North Carolina. The mayor and I were recently at a meeting last November, and out of the 32 cities that were there and represented, all 32 of them were making efforts to revitalize their center city. I just want to go through a little bit of the due diligence that the city has gone through in working on this idea of creating an event center, a downtown community facility. For those of you that believe that we've been rushing to work on this, in February of 2012, at the Rocky Mount City Council, this idea was brought to the Rocky Mount City Council, and the City Council authorized us to have a market feasibility done for the event center. PNC awarded a grant to pay for the study. AECOM was selected out of about 12 different firms to conduct the market feasibility study. At the Rocky Mount Retreat in February of 2013, a preliminary report from AECOM indicated a market existed. The final report was presented in November 2013, along with the financial analysis. A public meeting was held in this very same room in April of 2014. And we had all of our experts here, and really not one question was asked of our experts about the idea of building an event center. In May of 2014, the Rocky Mount City Council authorized me to secure funding for the proposed event center. In November 2014, the City Council was updated on the status of the project. In November 2014, the City Council approved a contract with SFA to prepare an operational pro forma for an event center in downtown Rocky Mount. I would just like to highlight for a minute the results of the AECOM report. And I just think it's just very important to say right up front, AECOM is an excellent company with a national reputation. What AECOM did is they got us in the ball game. They said that we had a market. What AECOM's report indicated was that by year 5, if an event center was built in our community, that it would yield 300,000 visitors to the center, and it would have a $12 million economic impact on the city. So tonight, what you're going to hear is a little bit more refined number from SFA. Just say to you that council and staff has been very focused on getting the right information in order for them to make the decision on the proposed event center. As we look around the community, some people want to know why we were having this meeting tonight. Well, the fact is that because of us being focused, we wanted the opportunity to share with our citizens the facts directly from the horse's mouth versus someone else trying to interpret facts that we send out. In May of 2014, and I had to call out one of my council members, Councilmember Tom Rogers, insisted on preparing a marketing plan that would ensure the facility can outperform the projection in the AECOM report. Tonight, you'll find out whether we were able to achieve that. The beauty of the process that we have done so far and the due diligence work that we have done, the fact is very important, and please remember this. We have not designed a building at all. And the problem that you see in most communities when they design a building, usually what happens is the city council says, city manager, go hire an architect, design the building, then build it. And then after they build it, they turn around and say, now can you make it make money? However, what we've done, instead of designing the building, what we've said is, let's see what the program would be that would operate within that building. SFA is going to share with you a program that would operate within the building. Then what we would do is we would build the building to surround the programs. The goal for the proposed event center is to create a new economy for our region and city. It's to create a destination location for our center city. It's to incent private investment in the center city. It's to grow the tax base. And it's to minimize the impact on our taxpayers. One comment that I want to be clear about tonight is someone questioned the use of new market tax credits. New market tax credits are a federally funded program, authorized program. And what it is intended to do is to build up wealth in low wealth communities, in low wealth census tracts. So you can't take those new market tax credits and go out to a clear piece of land sitting out on 64 or 95 that has no development at all and use those new market tax credits. Those new market tax credits are there to help change the economy and create a new economy. In our community, we have history of using new market tax credits. We use new market tax credits for the Imperial Center. We use them for the Douglas Block. Edgecombe County is now using new market tax credits to build the Biotech Center. There's a crane over downtown Rocky Mount. So to say that we're spending it to justify putting it downtown is not true. We are looking at census tracts that meet the qualification in order to use new market tax credits. Today, Deb Petit, CEO of SFA, or Sports Facility Advisory, and Account Executive Steve Goris are here to share with you their findings and operational pro forma for the downtown community facility, better known as the Event Center. We'll tell you that the pro forma that they have prepared is an institutional grade pro forma, which is important for obtaining financing for any project that you would do. I would also like to correct one other thing. We have been going through a process for design build for an event center. The design build process is a process to hone in on the cost to build the project, to build the facility. What we have been telling our the 5 companies that submitted proposals to participate in that process is that they have to deliver a building, the downtown community facility, better known as the Event Center, for $32 million. That's delivered all in. That means construct the building. That means all the furnishings that go into the building. It's not $50 million, okay? And so with that, I just wanted to correct the fact the AECOM study estimated the cost was going to be $37 million. So there's still some cost of issuing debt that's involved, but right now we're not talking about $50 million in expenditure in our community. At this point, I would like to introduce to you Dev Petit, CEO of SFA.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, council members, mayor. Glad to be here to present to all of you. We've been engaged in this process for the purpose of putting together a forecast that financing sources can trust. In our business, as we say, if we lie, we die. We are known as reliable to financing sources because our projects regularly outperform forecast. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on us just so you have a sense of where we are and what bias we do not have. In this case, I'm the horse that's going to be the horse's mouth. Real briefly, so that you get a sense. I founded SFA in 2003. We've served a portfolio of nearly $4 billion in youth and amateur and community-based sports facilities. That's what we do. We care about the health and economic vitality of the communities we enter. We are engaged to do feasibility. We're engaged to produce performas. And it's quite often the case that what we produce results in a negative finding where we say, this just isn't going to work in this particular community. But we've done that on every kind of facility you might imagine, from turf and aquatics to ice and adventure. We're doing it all over the world in markets that are very complex to analyze, Trinidad, Tobago, and Puerto Rico, and the Middle East, and all over the world. So when we look at Rocky Mount, we arrive using our proprietary systems to analyze how traffic would flow here and whether or not it would work. And it frankly is a much easier analysis than some of our studies. We're about 90 full-time people, and those full-time people come from all walks of life, the House of Blues, and from opening the largest indoor facility in the country to the gentleman who opened Disney's Wide World of Sports and was there for 13 years. It's just a phenomenal team of people. So I'm going to speak tonight, but as you might imagine, all of the real work was done in our office and by Steve. Last year, our venues hosted 12 million visits. We know how to fill a venue. And it's one thing to put a number in a box on paper. It's another to ultimately potentially be responsible for managing that. We do that very well. This year, we'll host between 15 and 18 million visits in our venues. We open a lot, so we get things financed, and that means that we are tracked by the financing sources because they want to know whether what you put on paper is actual reality. You can't get away in today's market with pretending that the numbers are real. We opened 1.5 million square feet of new indoor facilities between 2013 and 2014 and over 600 acres outdoor. All of the venues that we oversaw the opening for and management of are outperforming forecast in significant ways. I shared this already. We're known for producing accurate financial forecasts. It is not our job to agree with our client. It is our job to come forth with an accurate financial forecast that we may someday be willing to stand behind. That means that we often say no. And when we first looked at the AECOM study from our worldview, AECOM did a very good job at what they do, which is to look at that kind of event center with fixed seating. We knew that from a strategic standpoint, it needed to be, we thought, turned upside down a bit. It needed to be more focused on the youth and amateur sports market because these markets have been recession resistant, and I'll talk to you about this market in just a minute. It needed to be more focused on events that were going to keep people here for overnight stays. If you run a concert hall, the money leaves with the act. People come in, they see that event, they might have dinner and a glass of wine, and then they're gone. And the bus that leaves, the act, and the promoters are where the money goes. In youth and amateur sports, and you all probably know this, you hosted 85,000 athletes on your fields last year from outside the marketplace, with another 20,000 people who were affiliated spectators. In that market, when properly managed and organized, those people spend multiple days in your market, and they spend money on recreation and dining. So when we looked at that study, it was a well-done study but the strategy and the model behind it was something that we thought needed to be looked at more closely. We have lots of clients, and obviously many of you have and will do research on us, but the U.S. National Park Service, the Salvation Army, we just opened the Upward Stars Center in Spartanburg. Upward is 3,000 church-based sports facilities around the country. This is their hub. We did the Canada Games Center, the National Stadium of the Bahamas, and on and on. We're hired primarily by public entities and also by some private, and I'll show you some of those venues. There's a lot of media coverage about us because this marketplace is interesting. If you think about what our kids have access to now, I have 2 young kids. I want them in a facility where they can participate in healthy activity. 12 million visits means the world to us because that's 12 million times when people are participating in good, healthy, wholesome activity as opposed to the other things that they have access to. We are in our lane, youth and amateur and community-based activity. We do lots of concerts and special events inside our venues, but it's not where we focus. They come to us because the venues are so good. This just shows a listing of facilities and some of the traffic. If you're in the back of the room, I'd be amazed if you can read it. If you can, send me to your optometrist. But Spooky Nook Sports Complex, as an example, which Steve opened when he was a client of ours before he joined our team, has an annual visit count of 1 million people. And on and on. So these are real world, real examples. Everything we do is based in real world. If we don't see it happening somewhere else and we can't prove that it's real, we don't put it on paper. Anybody can put a number in a box. But to be able to say, here's where it's actually happening, that's the basis for a finance decision. No finance companies come in here with $30 million plus to give you money for something that's going to fail. I want to show you some of the venues just so you have a general sense of what we're talking about. We're talking about a highly customized venue for Rocky Mount. And the idea behind this venue is that it is a collection of sporting surfaces. So rather than fixed seats, they're telescoping seats. These telescoping seats are not without backs. They're actually quite comfortable, and they're the kind of seating where you can enjoy yourself. But telescoping seats means you have versatility in the floor space. Now you can run basketball or volleyball or a concert or a graduation or any number of other things. So that versatility is first and foremost key. The other elements to it are in Rocky Mount in particular, because you're not already a tourist destination with a lot of recreation amenities. When people come and play, you want them to stay and play. So inside the venue, we have a family entertainment center and a recreation venue. We have an indoor ropes course. We have corporate team building environment and leadership development center. We have classrooms. This venue, and it's not been visually designed yet, but when you see the performa I'm going to show you, you'll get a sense. This venue is a real attraction. It's a place that if you were living in Raleigh-Durham and you heard about it and you saw visuals of it, you're going to want to come and see it. It's very unique. And that was important to the strategy. The strategy is not to be what someone else is. It's to be what we're going to be and to own that identity. So you have to build something that's differentiated and unique, or else it's not going to work. So in terms of our venues, so that you can get a sense, we opened Rocky Top Sports World in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Gatlinburg's not a market like Rocky Mount, but it does have good drive time accessibility, which is your key factor. But this venue is 80 acres. It was done for, sub $30 million. We've been open since July. We're 150% booked to our year one forecast, and we're twice the economic impact of the forecast, twice the room nights. Myrtle Beach Sports Center, the city of Myrtle Beach is a client of ours. We're opening this venue next month. We're 90% booked to our year one forecast. So think we're going to open in a month, and we're 90% to the year one forecast. I think we'll make it to the forecast. We've got the rest of the year to get there. And that's because we have accountability oftentimes on both sides. So that's why I say we lie, we die. It'd be like, I said to somebody earlier, it'd be like, pretending, having a great date so you can get married to someone you don't want to be married to. We don't want to be married to Rocky Mount, helping you open a venue that's not going to be successful. That would be foolhardy of us. And in the press, it would be terrible for us. We want to look at markets where there are great opportunities and build things that are unique and uniquely suited to those markets. I'll just flip through a few others. This is Spooky Nook. This was built in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, population of 50,000. So all of the events, this is the largest indoor sports facility in the country. Steve opened it, by the way, as our client, and then he came to our team. But this venue has to have all of its events come from the surrounding communities. They have to come from Pennsylvania, New York, and so on and so forth to get there, because there's just not enough population to fill it locally. So it is a true destination. We did the National Stadium of the Bahamas, a true destination. People have to fly there to make this thing work, right? 15,000 seats. For the National Park Service, I'll just show you one or two others so you have just a general sense of, do these folks actually know what they're doing? The National Park Service hired us in 2005 when this venue had put them at risk. We didn't plan it, we didn't open it, but they had it. They had put them at risk for $35 million. It was the most at risk the National Park Service had ever been in their history. More risk there than Yosemite Park. And they called us and said, you've got to help us reforecast this. We'd become known for accurate, truthful, conservative forecasts. So we looked at it, we reorganized, we came up with a reorganization plan, a reforecast plan. We delivered that to them. They asked us to oversee its implementation, and that facility is now profitable, over $12 million a year. They're not at risk anymore. That's the right direction to go. And I can tell you, because we're in the turnaround business, we're hired by people who've built things thinking if you build it, they will come, which is just simply not true. If you build it, market it, and deliver excellence in the right location, they will come back, right? But if you don't do all of that, they're not coming back, and now your business is over. I can tell you that in the turnaround business, we see the tragedies of ill-conceived, poorly planned facilities that eat taxpayer dollar, and we have to go in and fix them. That's not at all what we want to see here. We have no interest in that. That is a tragedy. We see it in certain places. So what I'm going to show you in terms of Performa makes certain assumptions around excellence in marketing and management. It has a strategy behind that that's proven. It looks at the demographics that surround the community. The economic impact analysis we've done only accounts for room nights from those events and spending in your community based upon your historic room rate for your hotels that exist today and the number of players per room. So as an example, we all know that boys basketball isn't one room per kid, right? They pack them in, they order pizza, and they're playing Nintendo or they're on their cell phones. So we have calculations for every type of event, and then we apply your room rate, and then we look at the drive time, and I'll get to this detail in a minute, and only those people who are going to travel from 90 minutes outside of the marketplace are going to spend a night. Nobody who's coming from 30 minutes away is spending on a hotel room. But that's the only count we have in the economic impact is those overnight stays and then the average daily expenditures. What do people already spend when they come to Rocky Mount for a day in your tournaments and events? So let me jump forward then so you get it, lots of interesting venues. I want to talk to you about this marketplace because if you're not educated about this marketplace, what we're going to share to you just wouldn't make any sense. I want to tell you something else on a personal note. We founded SFA in 2003. We have never borrowed a dollar. We are fiscal conservatives. We've grown to this level. We pay our people well, but we pay them out of cash flow. We're not big borrowers and we're not big risk takers, and we're frankly not that innovative. What we do is look at what is working, let's bring it together in a new place. But I think if you understand that mentality, it may help some of you who share that perspective to understand why, as I share with you what I'm about to, it's rooted in that kind of conservative thinking. The sports travel industry, and if you want to research this, if you look up sports travel, if you Google it, or if you look at the National Association of Sports Commissions, it's a really good resource. Sports commissions are the office of a city. Bigger cities, all large cities have a sports commission, and many smaller and mid-sized cities now have them. But the sports commission is responsible for bringing sporting events to a city because sporting events have positive economic impact. Small sporting events have positive economic impact. Major events like the Olympics and the Super Bowl often cost a city more than they make them. But the youth and amateur market is really exciting because of the way it drives revenue. It's a $200 billion travel industry. According to the U.S. Travel Association, these are who the airlines and hotels and everybody else relies upon. It's the fastest growing segment of the travel industry. We're talking about sports travel. kind of venue in downtown Rocky Mount that is designed to bring teams here, similar to your other that's already doing 85,000 visits a year. In 2012, this statistic was rather shocking to me. I asked our research people to look at it again because I didn't believe it at first, to be quite honest with you. According to the U.S. Travel Association, 27% of all trips taken inside the United States were directly related to an organized sporting event. Now that's everything. That's collegiate. That's, we're a subsect of that. But what you can know is that sports travel in particular has been recession resistant. It's the only segment in the travel industry to never decline in a single quarter throughout the recession. So if you're wanting to think about economic development, this is why Rocky Mount and so many other cities have said, we got to look at this marketplace. There's a lot of wisdom behind it. There's a lot of money behind it. It's common for new venues like the one we're talking about to produce 30 to 40,000 room nights a year. And again, just as a refresher, you're already in this business. When we first got here, our quick reaction was great accessibility. I don't know if we could pull this off in that marketplace. Downtown in particular, as we first drove in, we said, okay, this is a different kind of downtown than we're used to seeing when we think about these kinds of venues. But then we started to dig in and we found that you already did, as I've said now, this will be the third time, but 85,000 people came here to play sports from outside the marketplace on your fields, 20,000 affiliated spectators. We said, okay, wait a minute, the market is already telling us that it wants to be here. And as I said earlier, we're not that innovative. We wanted some proof point to say, is this really happening? That was done by your city, Parks and Recs. Real briefly, you all have heard it, the AECOM study, they did the feasibility and economic impact. The differences are just that we have a very different business model. Theirs was designed for a fixed seating, concert-style event center with some basketball courts. Ours, what we did was we reviewed that study. We did market visits. We met with stakeholders, including many of you that are in the room here, many of you who shared concerns and doubts that we at the time shared in many cases. We cross-referenced our demographics to those of AECOM study, and then we used our systems. Our systems show drive time analysis, population, number of events. We put it all on a map. So we have these maps where we look at the competition and we look at what events can we host there. And then we produce the first draft of the Performa. And what we produced in first draft, we then deliver to our general managers. Jack Adams, who opened the House of Blues in Chicago, in Myrtle Beach, and in Orlando, is the vice president of our management company, looked at it and he said, no, you got this piece wrong. And so we updated. John McDonald, who's the general manager of Myrtle Beach, said, no, I think we're a little bit heavy on the cheer events. You've got to bring that number down. We had a serious concerted team effort to refine that analysis so it wasn't just our data sets, and so we had some outside perspective from people who would have to be booking the venue. And then we produced the economic impact, which, as I said, is just a calculation of the total spend on rooms, new room nights, and spending when people are here in market for people who are 90 minutes or further from outside the market, with solid assumptions about how many people are going to pack in a room so we're not overcounting, okay? Your years 1 through 5. I'm going to talk about the economic impact. This is new money coming from outside this marketplace being spent here. It's spent in hotels, it's spent on ice cream, it's spent on fuel, it's spent on retail, and I can tell you if this facility's coming online, I'd love to have an ice cream shop next door to it or some such thing because of the traffic. What we did not do, to be clear, is we didn't calculate new hotels being developed, despite the fact that in every market where this kind of venue comes online, new hotel pads are sold. We didn't do any of that tertiary, special, wizardry, multipliers. We just looked at direct spend. Your years 1 through 5 totals, total of the first 5 years in new spend would be $69 million, almost $70 million in new spending on hotels and new revenue coming into the city and the counties. In years 1 through 10, the total economic impact is $264 million. It's a lot of new revenue. If you were to look at and said, well, let's bring a new corporation here that's got, 500 employees, you'd be comparable to bringing multiple new corporations into the marketplace for this. $45 million in year 10. And at a high level, it's about twice the economic impact as the original study provided, just because of the difference in program. Obviously, it increases sales tax revenue for the counties and for the city, a total collection over that 10 years of about 5.2. That would not account for new taxes that might be associated with new businesses that are open. It provides an opportunity for downtown revitalization. I know there's been a lot of discussion and question about this. If I were going to open a food service business today, I'd open it out by 95, no question about it. But this is a destination, and it's a tool. So when you think about the destination, it's like Disney World. He built it in a swamp, right? And what you want to do is, if you built this out by 95 right now, what would happen is all of the spending would happen there, and people would bleed out into other communities to have their overnights. When you bring it downtown, you create a corridor of spending between the venue and back out to where people are going to overnight in the beginning. So that is smart economic development. It's very basic. Spend X to get Y. If spending $30 million gets you $264 million, generally speaking, that kind of an equation is attractive to communities that have decided to pursue this kind of tool. And I'm not suggesting that I'm here to convince any of you of anything. This is your community, right? I just want to give you the facts of what we've seen. It definitely has a jobs creation element. It's a community asset. In all of our venues, when we really get down to, okay, we're going to pursue this, so a city says we're going to move forward, we start with a planning session to say, what does this facility stand for? What is it about? So in Myrtle Beach, we got there, and it was about leadership and character development. So we created partnerships with the local universities, and now there's an internship program so that those kids are getting education and everything from events management to marketing to so on and so forth. It's that kind of community asset. There will also be inventory of time when community groups can use it. And what's very typical is groups that currently operate leagues or clubs locally we'll work with them to create new tournaments so they can generate revenue out of tournaments, which can be transformational. So rather than having to travel to the tournament, we're saying, well, we're going to put on a tournament here. And those are grow slow tournaments. The first year you might have 20 teams, but by year 4, if you're at 90 or 100 teams, now we're really hitting it out of the park. And that's revenue and opportunity for your local clubs and leagues. We're in the youth and amateur and community sports business, so despite the pinstripe suit and the tie, yesterday I was on a mountain bike when I saw Steve, but we're about play, and these facilities have to be fun, they have to be engaging, and they have to be connected to the community at every level. Obviously, the very first proof point for us was your current success in the sports tourism market. If that had not been front and center for us, if we had not seen the success that you've been able to build based on the location, it would have been, we would have had to do probably 3 or 4 more layers of trying to figure out whether or not this was even possible. But you go where the market takes you, and when the market says they want something, it's very clear. And when the market says, we would love to come to Rocky Mount to have a tournament and event, deciding to say, okay, well, let's do an indoor venue so that we can capture that portion of the marketplace makes good logical sense. You're essentially saying, we're already having success in the outdoor, what if we had an indoor? Okay, so our conclusions, and I don't think this will come as a surprise to any of you, that our conclusion is that a properly sized and properly programmed facility will significantly expand the economy through sports tourism, Rocky Mount's economy. Sorry for the typo. These events attract the ideal sort of visitor. These are families who've decided to commit themselves to their kids. They tend to be groups of people, whether they're in church sports or they're in league and club sports, or they're they are people who've decided to come and take responsibility for the time that they have as kids and families. With this plan, the city will be prepared to host a wide range of events. To be clear, it's not just volleyball and basketball. The venue has an opportunity to roll out turf for some local use, but also with all of the other amenities in it, you will have concerts and corporate team building. An indoor ropes course, a challenge course where people put a helmet on and harnesses is part of the plan. We'll attract corporate groups from Raleigh-Durham to do that. We have a venue on the West Coast that has an indoor ropes course, and it's literally millions of dollars a year in regional spend into that venue. But that's what it took to make this work. So for those of you who are saying, I don't know that this really works, we share that concern, because when we first started with just a blank canvas, we said, well, we're going to need this business unit and this business unit. We're going to need this synergy. We had to build a business model that was really special, not just build a box and say, let's play some ball. It'll create expanded marketing presence for Rocky Mount. We talked earlier today, the way that you go out and win these events is you go to certain trade shows. The National Association of Sports Commissions I mentioned earlier is one. Connect Sports is one. The Teams Conference is another. And at those trade shows, destinations are meeting with rights holders, the people who have tournaments and events. And the people with the tournament are saying, well, I really need something that's going to, essentially, they're for-profit organizations that want to make money by growing their tournament. Or they're nonprofit organizations that want to generate revenue by growing their tournament. So what they look for is drive time and accessibility, the venue itself, and then the amenities that surround it. So to do that well, this venue should begin a campaign about the destination as whole. The dialogue during construction will be, what else is Rocky Mount? What else do we have to offer people? What are the recreation opportunities, ecotourism, what's the trail system, so on and so forth. All of those things become part of how you promote and sell the destination. That is typically a turn for a community, to go from being, well, we're this city, to say, no, we're going to declare ourselves a destination. And then you have other businesses that arise. You have a new mountain biking company or a new river tour or some such thing. And they tend to be small businesses, but that can benefit from this sort of thing. And I think that's about it. I've talked about the venue. All right. How are we doing on time? Okay. So the Proforma. A Proforma is a future forecast that's based on market research and certain assumptions. So one assumption would be, we can't just build a box, and a steel corrugated box, put somebody at a desk and have it fill. That's one of our assumptions. One of our assumptions was we need recreation amenities inside this. We need it to be a destination that people will remember. We need it to actually be a place where corporate groups would be willing to travel from Raleigh and others, because they can have year-round team building and events that are unique and different. So as we did that, the first thing we worked out was a facility program, and that's what you're looking at here. And again, I'm not assuming this will all be up on the city's website so you can dig into it. But the facility program has a court space, which is a total of 72,000 square feet. So if you think about a Walmart and you cut it in about half for a big Walmart, it's about that much court space, okay? Now that has retractable seating, and just because it's court doesn't mean it's basketball, volleyball. It can be used for a variety of different purposes. That is a big free span space. If you're thinking about a dog show, a convention, a showcase of any kind, that kind of free span space is bigger than many, many convention centers and large hotels have. And then you've got all of these other areas, so satellite concessions. When you have 3,000 to 4,000 people in a venue, they can't all pile into one major concession stand, right? You got to have satellite concessions around the venue. We have, I'm just using a few examples here. Obviously there are lockers. There's a harnessing area for the ropes course environment. There's something called Clip and Climb that would be fun for anyone who wants to go look up Clip and Climb. It's a really high-tech climbing environment, but it's fun. Kids want to come and stay. And that's part of the goal in a sports tourism venue, is you don't just want the player to come, you want the coach and the player to say, well, bring the other kid, have them be in the venue. That's how you drive traffic. There is air wall storage. So tucked into the walls would be space where a wall, a divider wall for a space like a conference center, can be pulled out. So we've thought of everything we could to make the space as versatile as possible and still preserve it as a world-class tournament destination. Conferences and office space, that's 174,000 square feet. The actual building footprint is 163,000 because it has a mezzanine level. So there's some square footage that doesn't actually touch the footprint, okay? Then you go to the parking. Parking, believe it or not, all in is 20 by 20 per space. I had rooms in college and after that were smaller than that. But that space, per space, and we've got 700 spaces. That accounts for the setbacks from the road, for all of the berms that have to be put in place, for lighting and everything else. So the total acreage for the facility required that we put together is 12.76 acres. Okay? All right. The next, if you were looking at this page after page, this is the facility revenue. So this is all of the income that's coming in, and you can see that it comes from in-house basketball tournaments at the top, and you see years 1 through 5. I'm going to show you years 6 through 10 as well. And you see that total revenue in year 1 is $1.6 million, climbs to 2.8. By year 5, we're at 4.6 in gross sales. This is very common of our venues, so folks who are saying, well, is this real? Can this happen? We're more than happy to help you understand that reality. If you go out to year 10, we climb to a total of about $6 million, $5.9 million in gross revenue, okay? We have a 60,000 square foot facility right now on the West Coast that does $5.2 million. So on a revenue per square foot basis, that's just one example, but on a revenue per square foot basis, there's nothing in this that anyone who's in the industry would think of as extreme. Okay, then you go to expenses. So first you got to deliver those, you have to sell them, they pay you a check, and now you got to pay the staff, right? The model is designed to have multiple revenue streams, and the model is designed so that there's a core staff of about 5 full-time people, and then when an event is planned, they're all planned well in advance. Nobody comes in on a Thursday and says, I'd like to have a tournament tomorrow. That's not the way this works. This works 6, 8, 10, 12, sometimes 24, 36 months out. We're pre-opened. That's why I mentioned Myrtle Beach earlier, and I said we're 90% booked to year 1. That's because it was staffed from the day of construction, and we started selling events right away, right? So, but these expenses are for all the event staff and everything it takes to deliver those events. And so against that original revenue in year 1 of 1.6, you have direct revenue. It's easier to see on paper than it is to break it up this way, but you have direct expenses, of $800,000 with a gross margin for that program area of 51%. Well, now you still have to pay for the facility expenses, the operating expenses, the management payroll, etc. And so where this takes you is that this venue in year 1 through 5, by year 4, and so year 1 you can see, in parentheses means that that's an expense, a loss. Every business in America that starts is expecting to lose some money in the first several years as you get up on your feet. So that says that your year 1 expenses of $872, year 2, $682, year 3, $264, but then very different than your other model, you go cash flow positive from the operation in year 4. In year 5, it's $359,000 in operational profit. Year 6, EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and appreciation. It's the net revenue, okay? Net revenue of the operation. Year 6, $376, and then year over year, it stabilizes at about $500,000. So that $500,000 is available then to service this facility. That plus the $5 million over that 10 years in new tax revenue, if we were to just hit forecast, and the $264 million in new spend that comes. It shouldn't be and. The $5 million comes out of that $264, but that $264 million, that's new spend into your community. So from our worldview, I live in Clearwater, Florida, and there's a lot of talk about building a new big aquarium. And aquariums are quite expensive, as you might imagine. And if you miss in an aquarium, it's very expensive. I'm concerned about that plan, okay? But if we were building this venue in my community, I'd be really excited. And I'd be excited because it has multiple lines of revenue. It's in a proven market model. It becomes cash flow positive by year 4 in the operation. And the total benefit to the community from an economic development standpoint is really exciting at $260 million. Look, if you miss by $2 or $3 million and you're at 260, you're going to be at 265 or you're going to be at 258. You have plenty of room in this model to do well. So that's a rapid fire overview of a lot of work that, frankly, Steve and the team has done with, some meetings with me and obviously the city. The urging we had, to be clear, the urging we had was tell us the truth. We can't put ourselves in a position where something gets sold and then we're actually in reality, and the reality is different than what was promoted. And so for us, it's been a very, very positive experience here. We're excited about your community. We were frankly surprised and excited about the results of this from first phone call through the study process. So, what's that? Sure. Just to give you a sense of the kind of caliber of a venue, we have a video from a recent opening, Rocky Top Sports World in Gatlinburg, just so you get a sense for, and I don't know that we even need music, but 1 minute and 50 seconds, please. There you go. All right, so this is just to give you a sense of kind of fit and finish when you get on the interior of these venues so that you can differentiate it from maybe other things you might be thinking. So typically lots of glass. You need it to feel like a very special environment. If it doesn't feel like a special environment, people are going to be disappointed and they're going to go to the next best environment. Obviously, you've got registration and check-in areas. You have to think about the flow of traffic in the venue. This venue has multiple team rooms. Those are also conference rooms and meeting rooms. When you go out on the main floor, this is going to present it as a sports hall. But when you turn the lights down and you put on some colored lights and you cover the floor, it can be virtually anything you want it supposed to be. What it has to do is meet the specifications from the major tournament organizers. These are retractable curtains that push button. All of the netting, push button electronically can rise so that no matter what it's been converted from having been a basketball game to being a special event. I think that's probably. Okay.
Are you going to come up here, Tasha? Are y'all going to come up here? All right, we're going to have them come up, read the question, and then Deb's going to respond to it.
Yeah, you want me to sit?
Or you can sit down and you can
All right.
address it then. So come on up, Tom.
Well, good evening. Thank you for your questions. What we'll do is try to sort through, as Mayor Combs said initially, the questions are intended to be directed towards the content that was presented by SFA. And so there are a variety of questions that have importance. However, I wouldn't think that Steve or Dev would be the appropriate person to answer it. So I'll kind of sort those to the side and I'll confer with the manager. But I'll go ahead and start with the questions. The first one is, what is the contingency plan to pay for this center in the event it fails? And again, you've seen the pro forma, and I think, Deb, you want to maybe respond to that?
Sure. Well, so the sales and marketing cycle for this from a business perspective is very long, and the versatility of the venue gives you a lot of opportunity to sell different types of events. So we literally have things that aren't forecasted in here, like fencing, wrestling, table tennis. There are cultural festivals that are hosted in venues. So it is absolutely accurate to imagine that it's possible that the basketball tournaments won't hit 100% of what's forecasted there. What our objective is always is to hit the bottom line number, right? That bottom line result is based on such a conservative set of forecasted combined events that if we were to just, we call them big wins, if we just sell 2 or 3 big wins. As an example, the total revenue forecasted for basketball tournaments in year 1, can you go to that number for just a second, Steve, on your performance? The total revenue forecasted for in-house basketball events in year 1, 18,840. We recently sold a corporate event that was a $40,000 rental from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That happens regularly. So the contingency plan starts with good strategy, versatility in the business model, versatility of the space, and pre-opening marketing that is as aggressive as you can possibly be. And it's exactly why you will find, if you dig into the venues that we have opened and managed, that they are all outperforming forecast. That's the other contingency plan, is you need to have proven management in the venue. So,
Thank you. Next question from the same individual is, how will the city of Rocky Mount pay for property takings or for the acquisition of land?
I think Dev can answer that question. First, we're not going to be taking anyone's land. We will have property appraised, and we will pay fair market value for any property for the location of the facility.
Thank you.
And let me just say, Tom, all of that is also calculated in the, not in the pro forma, but in the financing with new market tax credits and the financing. All of that would also be covered, included in the amount that we borrow.
actually, related to that, let me just talk about contingency. The financing sources will require a covenant ratio, which is they have to see within the pro forma, and they have to see within the ability of the city and the overall process that there is enough available revenue to cover any losses. So we've produced a sensitivity analysis which shows what happens within the pro forma if it underperforms and what happens if it overperforms. It's more common for ours to overperform, but the financing sources will require that the business model and that the revenue forecasts are stable enough and reliable enough that they can put money into the project without thinking they're going to lose their shirt. So,
Thank you. Next question. How much are we paying you?
Their contract was $32,000.
Where will the event center be built, east or west of the railroad tracks?
to be determined.
Downtown Rocky Mount.
Would you, SFA, build this without any public money but your own? How many jobs will this create, both part-time and full-time? What is the annual wage? And I'll stop there and I'll ask the rest.
So it's 50 full-time equivalents. We wouldn't build this model because this model is designed for economic impact. So on the for-profit private side, we own Bo Jackson's Elite Sports Development Group. That is, those are training-based facilities. So those are for-profit and designed for for-profit. That means that the revenue they generate comes straight into the venue itself, and that's where the revenue actually occurs. These models are more like convention centers. They're intended to drive most of the spending on the outside of the venue. So you sell, so here's an example. If a group wants to rent this or come and have a tournament here, they're going to negotiate. They're going to say, I've got 300 room nights, right? And as a private operator, well, what do I care about your 300 room nights? I want your money in my venue, right? So, but as an economic development tool, those room nights are part of the objective for the management. So you say, that's very good. Given that many room nights, we're happy to give you the venue at a discounted price. So there's this, there's a discrepancy between profitability in the facility and economic impact, because the best economic impact events know that they are that, and they require you to give them the venue at a lower rate. And that's what this model is based on. So that, hopefully that responds.
What is the annual wage for the jobs?
From the general manager down, general managers for facilities like this are typically attracted from, as an example, Joan LeMahieu, who's one of our general managers, was the general manager at Ford Field, the Detroit Lions Stadium. John McDonald, and I'm just giving you so you have a sense of caliber, and then I'm going to tell you the salary. John McDonald, who's one of our general managers, was the general manager of several arenas and convention centers, and then came to us. Jack Adams, as I mentioned, opened the House of Blues. So this is in the for-profit, private marketplace. Generally speaking, those folks are paid somewhere in the $90,000 range, and they have incentive to hit the numbers. So it's a very, it's a very good job for those folks. Marketing director down, they go into the 80s and 70s and so on and so forth. Still, what's interesting is that if you took the same people and personnel and you had them on and they're paid through a private organization like ours, it tends to be much less expensive than if they were paid on the public side, because the retirement and entitlement programs that happen on the public side in the long run can be quite expensive. So private that's why many public entities go to private management. So,
How will other facilities coming online impact your model?
what it does is it first and foremost, it strengthens the importance of our network. All of our general managers have a weekly meeting. So our general manager in Rocky Top meets with Myrtle Beach, meets with our Iowa, with our Texas, with all of our other venues. And those folks are collaborating to figure out how they can trade business with one another and making sure that the caliber of the experience is so great that when the market knows it's an SFA, SFM facility, that the market's going to say this is the best place. So that's one of the things that happens, is that now we're really the only people that have that sort of network. When new facilities come online, that's helpful to the competition. But what's more important is that we're ahead of the curve in terms of trend. Tomorrow I'll be speaking in Washington, D.C. at Aspen Institute Project Play. It's the Clinton Foundation, Nike, ESPN, Sports Illustrated, and us. That has to do with youth community sports across the nation, not so much sports travel. And so that they are talking about the need for more facilities around the country for just general recreation. What we have to do is we have to look forward, and that's a trend-forward organization. That's why I bring it up. We have to look forward and ask questions like, what's coming? So I can tell you some of the things that are coming are BMX. BMX are the bicycles that people ride on these dirt tracks and wood tracks. This venue can be set up for an event to be BMX. I can tell you what's coming is endurance races and events that, like these Tough Mudders. So we can put on endurance races that use the clip and climb and the ropes course and the indoor environment as a portion of those races. What's coming is the continuation we see in sports travel and strength in girls' sports. So it's about being ahead of the curve on those things so that as they're coming and emerging, our facilities are the ones that are hosting them. But there will certainly be other facilities, and we've accounted for that in our competition analysis.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that that is part of our analysis. We look at what we call our capture rate of the existing tournaments out there, and we start to eliminate some of that capture based on the fact that we know new facilities will come online. One of the things about being a proven management company, though, as well, is that there's always going to be new competition in the marketplace, and it's how we, again, see the future and react and change our business in order to compete in that marketplace. We've been very successful at doing it, and we'll continue to do so.
Will you publish the sensitivity analysis numbers and what it is actual?
Sure. I mean, and anyone could do them themselves. Really, it's a simple equation of 90%, 80% of total revenue, but I'm certain we can put the sensitivity analysis out, absolutely.
Please explain the concession numbers and detail of what comprises the corporate, group, and entertainment events.
So concessions is based on an average spend per person. So we'll look at how many people come into the facility based on the event, how many teams, how many spectators we expect to have, and then we use a dollar figure per person in that market. I think it's like $1.50 a person that we expect to spend. So that's how concessions numbers get derived. You'll see it when you go online tonight. You can see the detail behind it. The corporate events side is really based on our history and our data of what we think we can bring into market. So that includes things like anything from a wedding to a conference to a trade show to I don't know, bar or bat mitzvah. Whatever type of event we can have in the facility, we will have. So that's what comprises that, as well as some concerts, minimal concerts, but some concerts and other events as well.
Will this increase property taxes?
In order to pay for the facility, it is anticipated that the revenue that would be utilized would be property taxes.
How will this affect the tax base for Nash County residents, and will it ever go to public vote? I think I can omit the last part. The question is, how will this affect the tax base for Nash County residents?
Well, first, we live in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Okay? And if we were to build the event center today, everybody that came and spent the night is going to stay in Nash County in a hotel. So the tax base in Nash County is going to continue to be helped. Since 2008, 3 hotels have been built in Nash County, even during the recession. Again, the hope is by rebuilding our downtown, we make our community a vibrant place that people want to come, live, work, and play. Also to increase the tax base. Our downtown is split by a railroad track. One side is Edgecombe, one side is Nash County. Our belief is that by building up downtown, Nash and Edgecombe counties are going to benefit from the investment in a facility in downtown Rocky Mount.
Thank you. How does this compare to the Roanoke Event Center? Are you familiar with that? Okay.
I don't know the event center, so I don't know. You do, so.
There's no comparison. There's no comparison. The Roanoke facility is an auditorium. We are not building an auditorium. Rocky Mount already has an auditorium. We have a 1,200-seat auditorium at the Dunn Center. We have a 300-seat theater at the Imperial Center. We're not competing with either one of those facilities. What we're talking about is a facility that can accommodate sport athletic activities, but yet still can be used for a concert. It can be used for conferences or any number of things. There's no comparison between the two.
How will you involve all of the citizens? Presumably in the process.
Well, I believe in talking with your council members, you will have an opportunity to share your thoughts with them. But also, as we are trying to design the facility, citizens will have an opportunity to have input in the design of the facility. There'll be opportunities for that involvement.
Is there a conflict for your company, Dev, to prepare a performer and then be interested in managing the facility? What would prevent you from presenting positive numbers just to get the business?
Month 1 results. If as I said earlier, it'd be like pretending you want to get married to someone and then when you know it's going to be a disaster. It would be foolhardy. We didn't start our company yesterday. We've been in the business for 12 years. And when you learn about us, you'll learn that we are, as we say we are, fiscal conservatives and that we're outperforming forecasts in every. We're not in the business of writing paper documents and leaving them behind. We're in the business of bringing new concepts to life that can improve the health and economic vitality of communities. Given that that's our business model, if we were at the end of month 1 and we were in a monthly budget versus actual meeting, because that's the way this goes, it's every month there's a monthly budget versus actual meeting where we report up to our owner client. And in that meeting, we compare our forecasted revenue and expenses for that month to what our actual performance is. This is public dollars in this case. And in all of those situations, even today, we're in multiple monthly budget versus actual meetings. It would be foolhardy for us to try to win a contract so that we could destroy our reputation. It'd be foolhardy for us to tell you this will work and we think it's a success story so we could ruin our reputation. And I know many of you have done research on us and you know we are what we say we are. So that would just be, that would be a conflict.
Does the Gateway and Dunn Center have space for events? Does their project get filled? You've already mentioned, Mr. Penny, reference to the Dunn Center, but the Gateway?
The Gateway would provide, they have space for banquets and all, but they have limited seating. If you go to the Gateway Center, you already know that you're limited to about 350 to 400 people comfortably for a banquet. And then this facility, if you were looking for something larger, you would certainly have the opportunity to do that.
And I'll add that they're not designed for this, the fastest growing segment of the travel industry. This is sports tourism as the primary focus, so it's a very different product set. It's a different market. It's a market that's actually paying money for events. So I think that is a significant difference between the models of the two. And frankly, for much larger events, because this venue is going to be marketed nationally, those venues provide opportunities for events that can spill over for award ceremonies and other things. So,
a question regarding the location. The writer writes, why not use the Thorpe Tobacco property surrounded by the stadium and ball fields?
First off, we wouldn't recommend that, and the reason why we wouldn't is because that property flooded. If you remember, in 1999, there was 6 feet of water going across that location, so the property's in the floodplain. The warehouses on the upper end down by the YMCA they did not flood, but the warehouse did have flooding issues. The other thing, and again, I'm just going to keep saying this and keep repeating this, we are trying to enhance our center city. We are trying to enhance our center city. Every city in this country, in this state, are trying to rebuild their city center. Raleigh, it took the city of Raleigh 30 years to figure it out. They now have $12 billion worth of development in downtown Raleigh. It took Asheville many years to figure it out. In 1987, downtown Asheville was worth $47 million. In 1994, when I came to Rocky Mount, it was worth $94 million. Today, downtown Asheville is worth $500 million and growing. And people are trying to get there. We are trying to improve our community, improve our city center, make our community attractive to people to come live, work, and play, and to be able to attract industry to our city, to our community, Nash and Edgecombe counties.
Thank you. Other than federal tax credits, with continuing home values going down, how would tax revenue be considered in bringing in revenue to pay for the center? And I believe you've already responded to that. There are a couple that relate to the funding. Again, this is a question regarding the location, a little different. Why would you put an event center downtown and there are no hotels operating downtown? Need modern hotels. Are you planning on building hotels downtown?
I can speak to, from an economic development standpoint, the event center is a destination. So you could put it, as we said, you could put it out close to the highway, or you can bring it into downtown. Given that the funding source requires that you're in a revitalization zone, that's one reason. But the other is that it creates greater benefit. The more time people spend driving through your tax base to the venue, the more economic impact opportunities you have along the way. The gas station's going to do better, the ice cream shop's going to do better, the grocery store is going to do better. So that's one. Two, I think you should expect that over some period of time, a hotelier, in probably a very short period of time, a hotelier is going to say, I want to be in a hotel, I want a hotel downtown. And that's where the spark begins. That's happened at, I used Rocky Top Sports World as an example earlier. It was open in July. 3 hotel pads have been sold within a couple of miles of that venue since July. Because hoteliers understand this marketplace. So those are the reasons that it made sense to us. And I can tell you we were asked to challenge it, and given the goals and objectives of it and the financing source and everything else, for us it came to make very good sense.
And I would just simply say, in the history of the city, for folks that know Rocky Mount, we did have hotels in downtown Rocky Mount. And so that's not to say that it cannot happen again. And we would expect that a venue like this would, as Dev mentioned, would make some hotel folks interested in our downtown location. I would like to say that, and since we've just been having this conversation, our downtown development manager talks about fielding about 5 calls a day about opportunities for downtown locations for various business opportunities. So it has piqued a lot of interest about our center city.
Mr. Penny, this question really was a subject of today's Committee of the Whole, and the question is, with increased crime rate in Rocky Mount, how will this facility be marketed to encourage parents to bring their youth to this area? And we had an extraordinarily fantastic report from Chief Moore today, but would you like to maybe just summarize the comments from Chief Moore today?
The comment that I would make to the citizens and to all citizens, our crime rate has not stopped 85,000 tournament visitors or 30,000 additional residents, visitors to come to our city. We have been having visitors to our city since 2006 when we opened the sports complex, and not one thing has happened to anybody that has come to our city. So I don't expect that it's gonna all of a sudden become worse, because in actuality, the numbers that were shared with us today by Chief Moore is that our crime rate, and I don't know if Chief Moore is here, and I might get it wrong, but I know the mayor can keep me right. Our crime rate today for 2014 was on par with our crime rate from 1983 for 35 years. So it's one of the lowest crime rates in 35 years in our community. So what we have to stop doing is playing to the negative and playing up the negative. The other thing that we've also seen is that whenever you look at the numbers, our crime rate has been reducing. Violent crimes, Part 1 crimes, we've had double-digit reductions in the past 2 years. Even during the month of January, we had a 30-some% reduction this January from last January. So again, I just simply say to you, we're already a destination location. People come to this community and have a good time. And they don't walk around and say they're worried about crime. They enjoy Rocky Mount all over Rocky Mount.
And Mr. Penny, you would also say, along with the police department working with residents, we're still working to ensure that the safety of our community continues to improve.
No question, Tom. Thank you. Thank you for that. There's no question. That's why I have two great assistants to help me. We working with each of you. We continue to make our community better. And that's our goal. That's our goal. I don't care how much we might disagree about what we think our efforts are. Our ultimate goal should be to make Rocky Mount the best Rocky Mount we can make.
There are a couple of questions regarding debt service, and maybe the synopsis of both is why not show the debt service as part of the results of operation on the performer?
Well, we obviously have consistently talked about that there would be debt service involved with the event center. However, we are refining those numbers, but it was more important because so many people have focused on the subsidy that was identified by AECOM, and again, SFA identified that there would be some subsidy. We thought it was just very important to indicate that you could operate this facility and deal with the operational numbers. There's no question that there will be some debt service. And as we continue to refine those numbers, we will share those numbers. But I want to be clear to you. The sports complex does not pay for itself. There's debt service involved. But again, 85,000 tournament visitors, 30,000 additional people have come and have enjoyed the sports complex, a $9 million economic impact on our city last year. And so the debt service is important, and we're not trying to hide it, but we just thought it was really important for you to focus on the fact that SFA could put together a program, and they did it. They didn't do it at my direction. They were able to prepare a program that cash flowed in year 4 and did not show a deficit going out beyond that third year.
Mr. Penny, just for clarification, any of the other buildings and facilities the city owns, does it generally have debt service on them?
The Imperial Center has debt service, and it'll probably be about 14 years before we complete that. However, I'm glad to tell you that the sports complex will be paid for in 4 years. By 2019, the sports complex will be paid off. That's $1.2 million that we pay every year and have paid since 2006.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. There are several questions that were duplicates, so when I get to those questions, I will go ahead and bypass those. I just don't want anyone to think that we're omitting their questions. The first one that I'll ask the panel, what venues will we be competing against in this region, and how would our facilities stack up?
Well, the marketplace, first of all, the facility, how it stacks up. We designed a facility that's going to stand on its own and be a staple, one that people are going to want to come through from around the country. There's no question. As you look around this area, facilities that tie in the sports, the entertainment piece, and the family entertainment, so the clip and climb, the arcade, the adventure, a lot of them don't exist. So we think that that's a real destination draw. So in general, it'll stack up very well nationally and especially regionally. But we'll compete with the markets. We'll compete with Myrtle Beach. We're going to compete with Gatlinburg. We're going to compete with facilities up in Virginia. We know that. We've taken that into consideration and feel that with this program, we can definitely attain the goals that we've set in place.
Are you familiar with the Powerade State Games of North Carolina, organized by the North Carolina Amateur Sports Organization, that draws over 12,000 amateur athletes annually? It's being held in the Triangle in 2015 and 2016, the Triad for 17 and 18, and in Charlotte in 2019 and 20. Would an event center in our community be able to host this type of event?
Yes, I think the size of that particular event would make this venue not necessarily the best qualified for it. But that caliber of event, yes. But there are events like that which seek a large metropolitan city. They have certain criteria, and they require bid fees. To chase those events, you go and you spend a lot of money to win the event. Those events are you can only actually make them work if you have a larger metropolitan area and if you've got a budget to go pursue with bid fees. We don't tend to pay bid fees. We would rather discount the use of the facility and grow events over a period of time than go buy an event that will only come to the city 1 or 2 years and then be gone. That business model is this gerbil wheel where you are always running, chasing the next event. Our venues are successful because we're willing to, in that year 1, take those losses and grow a series of events that come back year over year over year, which is exactly why you're at 85,000 visitors this year, and you can look forward to next year and you can reliably forecast that that's going to grow, because rather than going out and chasing big events that want to come here 1 year or another and you get the media exposure, you all have already been growing events that come back year over year. That's a really important difference in the model and in the thinking. You want a loyal customer, you want to build a good relationship, you want their event to be centered around your destination. So.
In your analysis, what are the significant risk factors we should consider and keep in mind as we move forward with a project such as this?
Well, competition is one, as we said, and that's why we've designed for versatility, and we've designed more entertainment, recreation, and more fun, frankly, into the facility. I wasn't a great traditional athlete. I was an outdoor person, so I always say I couldn't catch a Nerf ball if you tossed it across the table, and I probably don't know who played who yesterday. I assure you of that. But that said, when I walk into facilities around the country, the first thing I ask is, where's the fun? Where is the fun? Does the place inspire me? Does it make me want to? That's an important factor to your venue. Your venue will be a special destination, a place that the competition would have to completely alter their entire floor plan, their entire layout, and their programming. They'd have to hire new management in order just to compete with you. So competition is one of the risk factors. That's why we've built in as much versatility as we've had. The other would be, if we don't, what we believe is that this begins the spark of a true destination marketing campaign for Rocky Mount. We don't think it's just a matter of you build it, you market these events. If we're going to be at the trade events and we're selling basketball and volleyball right next to where people are buying turf sports, we should be marketing Rocky Mount as a great sports tournament destination. So marketing the fields that you have. That means that we need a campaign around understanding what the destination of Rocky Mount is. We need a video that shows how easy and accessible it is. We need customers who've already been having tournaments and events here to be speaking on video. So one risk factor would be that we don't go sort of all the way in terms of the marketing effort, but we've built that into the startup costs. That's how we're addressing that. And then the third is that there would be some major, significant economic downturn. The reason we focused on youth and amateur sports as opposed to concerts and conventions is because it was recession resistant. So the strategy at the base level is one that is intended to accommodate or address some of these risk factors. There's no way to account for every risk factor, but those are some of those are three. One would be the regional competition, so we have to have a better venue with better amenities, more recreation, and more fun. Two, versatility in the total amount of product offerings. Three is to make sure that we go out and we properly market the venue. So,
how will this center impact the youth in our own community?
If you have a kid, do you not want this facility here for them? I'm not suggesting that, wherever side of the fence you're on in terms of the thought process for this, if this facility's open, your kids are going to want to have a birthday party in the venue. I can assure you of that. Your kids, if you are participating in club sports locally, when you find out that we can help you develop a tournament, you're probably going to want to stop into the facility. So for your local use, primarily group use, that's what it's about. It's not a competition to the Y. It's not a membership model. So it doesn't do what the Y does. I'm on the board of the YMCA, so I love the Y. Not your Y, but the Y. And But what it does, what it will create for your kids is a bit of a wow factor, a sense of community pride, opportunities for experiences that they could not have outside this community, opportunities for their summer camps and the programs they're already in to put them up on the ropes course, to have experiences that are triumphant, where you blend fear with triumph. Most of our kids are experiencing fear, and that's followed by something bad. Courage comes from blending fear with triumph, where you say, I was afraid and then I triumphed. That's how we learn to persevere. So the venue is designed to create some very powerful educational experiences, no question about it.
Sorry to ask about failures, but have some of the projections that you've provided not performed to those projections, and why?
Yes. So typically, none that we've managed. So there's a cycle where you create a strategy and a plan, you adhere to that strategy and the plan in the construction process, so you actually design a program that's intended to do what we did here, right? If we left here and you went and designed a steel corrugated box that was half the size and darkly lit, that venue would not perform to the level of what we've done. And then there is the pre-opening and the management. So the venues that we've planned that have been significantly altered without our involvement, where we haven't been involved in the opening and the management, where they've had significant alters in that, I think there are 2 community rec centers that public entities took over, not from us. They just said, we just want the plan, the document. They went and did it themselves, that are underperforming. Both of them have contacted us to see if we would come back in and take over management. But that's 2 out of $4 billion in various developments. So,
will your company be the only company that can bring events into the area, or could other companies schedule events at this facility?
Yeah, we don't own the events. This is important. There are event owner groups that manage facilities. We don't own the events. The events are brought, they are all outside event owners. 9 out of 10 times. And if the event is owned within the facility, then it becomes owned by you, the client, not us. So anyone who wants to have an event in the facility will have that opportunity. That's the purpose, bring new people to the community.
Thank you. What are all the sources to pay for the event center, and who has the final say for approval of the event center? What are all the sources being used to pay for the event center? Who has the final vote or say for approval of the event center?
Well, first, the final say is with Rocky Mount Mayor and members of the City Council. That's their decision. The sources that would be used to
pay for the
again,
facility.
new market tax credits. We would do some financing, and we've looked at a number of things to a number of ways. We looked at EB5. We looked at some private placement of funds. And to be honest with you, there's quite a bit of interest to fund this project because folks that sit away from our community think a lot of our community. They like the way the city has managed its assets. They like the way we have been conservative in the way we manage our assets, our financial assets. They like the fact that we are typically on the cutting edge of things when we do projects. They also like the fact that we do outstanding projects. I don't want to have to speak for Dev, but when Dev came to our community and they rode around and they went to the Imperial Center and they said, this building doesn't do justice from the outside. When you walk in there, you don't know that you aren't in downtown D.C. or in New York. And so we have folks that want to fund this project for us because of the great reputation and the great foundation that was established by this city.
This question is also related to financing. It's two parts. One part, I believe we've already addressed, and that is whether or not this decision would be put to a vote by the public. And the second part of the question is, how much will the city finance in all? How do the tax credits actually work in the project? And what is the total debt service for this project?
Okay, now, it's hard at this point to really finalize numbers. I gave you a number earlier that we talked about with our design bill, that not to exceed $32 million, and that's all in. That's constructing the building, that's furnishings and everything. As far as, there was a lot in that question. I'm sure I can remember it all. As far as the
how will the tax credits be used
the
in
way
the project?
what happens with the tax credits? The tax credits, if you have a project and say, for example, it's $35 million, and the tax credits are a part of that, and Bridget, if the project's $35 million and the tax credits are in that, the effect would be you'd have $8 million that would go against it. Now, there's some costs for issuing and things of that nature, but in effect, for 7 years, you have to pay taxes on that property taxes on it. And at the end of year 7, there's a loan for that, I guess, $8 million that is forgiven at the end of year 7. And what happens is, so that loan goes away, and you've only been paying interest on that loan for that 7 years. So then what happens is, at the end of that 7-year period, you have about $27 million that is owed. So one part of the loan goes away, it's forgiven, and you pay the balance of the money over a period of time. And what we're looking at is financing the project over a 20-year period. But the new markets will help cover some things that we might not otherwise be able to do. But it's sort of like a grant for the project to help make it economically feasible. And I think there was one other question. Someone asked about a referendum. Referendums are typically held when you use GO bonds to fund something. It is required by law, if you use general obligation bonds to fund something, that you have to have a referendum. Otherwise, you're not required to have a referendum. I will tell you that in some communities, they've had, and I'll give you an example, the city of Durham. They had a referendum for DPAC. The voters voted it down. City council built it anyway. Aren't they glad they did? The DPAC today is ranked in the top 4 in the country for performances, because we go there all the time.
We've got about 7 more questions. Hopefully that'll take about 10 more minutes, and then we're going to end it. So we're going to go through these as quick as we can and try to finish up.
Just also related to the financing, How much of a tax increase do you anticipate for the average homeowner? If you could get an example based on a $100,000 home.
What we have done in the calculations that we've looked at, the tax rate would stay under 6 cents over a period of time, and depending upon the growth in the tax base, it could be less than that. And so, if a $100,000 home, and I'm the wrong person to be trying to calculate it.
Amy.
Amy, can you help me?
$60.
About $60?
$60.
Yeah, I could calculate that. $60.
Will there be space in this facility that would be available for businesses to rent?
No, it's not designed with the intent for long-term leases in any of the spaces, because the spaces are intended really to drive new revenue, new uses, and event experiences into the venue.
There's a question that was, I think we've addressed earlier, talks about this facility and would it compete with our YMCA?
Well, just to address it clearly, no. The YMCA is a membership-driven model that also provides other social services from a nonprofit perspective. I know it well. As I said earlier, I'm on the board of the YMCA. So, no, we are not selling memberships. You don't come in for fitness in this facility. The rock climbing sort of apparatus is all group events based. So it's a very different model altogether. We visited the Y as part of our market visits and tours with the goal of making sure that we weren't creating something that would undermine or compete with the Y.
In the performer, you quoted an average annual salaries of other venues. Are these venues in communities that are similar economically to Rocky Mount, and would those salaries be the same here in Rocky Mount?
They are in markets that are both similar and dissimilar, but the market to attract top talent, right, is the same. You can't go out and get a top general manager for a lower level salary because you're competing to go get the best. That's a good thing. I mean, at the end of the day, you want this thing to be run by the very best talent in the industry that comes here with fresh and new perspective along with our models and processes. So yes, they are similar and dissimilar in size, and yes, we understand that it's a lot of money for someone to make, but if you entrust somebody with a $30 million ship or plane, you want that person to know how to fly that plane.
Will the Imperial Center be part of any management contract as we move forward with the Event Center?
No, that's never been discussed. It wouldn't be an aspiration of ours. What I think would happen is the Imperial Center would be positively impacted. When you go out and you market a destination, you have this many people, the overflow. Think about the Oscars last night. The overflow after a big event means they need space, right? And so to be able to walk and go and have an event there, an award ceremony or some such thing, it should positively impact those other venues. That's exactly why you want the management to be responsible for economic impact and for filling your venues, your hotels, everything else. It's really important.
Well, I know we want to, the hour's getting long. I will say that when we first talked with the city council about the idea of an event center, one of the interests was to try to tie the two together so that we could get some energy and to increase the number of people that are taking advantage and going in and out of the Imperial Center. So it may not be something that we're talking with SFA about managing, but we certainly want to gain some energy from the marketing efforts to ensure that we can increase the use of the facility.
These are the last two questions. Can you give us an idea of some of the proposed projects that you've rejected, and were any of these similar to what is being proposed in Rocky Mount?
Yeah, I mean, we reject projects 7 times a week. You know, we get a lot. We have almost $1 billion in new developments call our office every week. And they come from all over the world. And it'll be somebody that says, I'm in the middle of a cornfield out here in Iowa, and I want to build the greatest Dreams Park. But the Dreams Park, in fact, Field of Dreams, is a project we rejected. It was based on the Kevin Costner movie. They called us. They wanted to do something in the middle of Iowa. We said, it's not going to work. You don't have the infrastructure. They said, please, can't you just study it? We said, look, we'll do a very, very preliminary study. We're going to take the temperature, but all that's going to do is tell you that it's not going to work. They said, no, we're convinced. You got to look at this. We took a short little look, like a 3-4 week look. Came back to them with a report that said, you can't make it work. It just doesn't work in that destination. There's no drive time. There's no amenities. That happens every week, multiple times, long before they come up the chain. We have a lot of people, right? So before we see them, people are disqualified. We don't want people spending money on analyses that can't go anywhere. It's just a waste. It's a gerbil wheel, as I said earlier. So that's one example, but it happens day in and day out in our office where people call and for one reason or another, either their market, their financing, their overall capability just isn't there.
Is there any guarantee that comes with the numbers that have been provided by SFA? Is there any recourse to the city if these numbers are wrong?
No, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee from, PricewaterhouseCoopers or any firm that would put out a forecast on anything. That's not the business of putting forecasts together. The business of putting forecasts together is building the most reliable, most well-researched and comprehensive, based on comparable analysis. But there's no guarantee that your home value is going to improve over the next 5 or 10 years, and there's no guarantee to these. So there's no recourse in that regard. The recourse is that people's reputations are on the line and the company's reputations are on the line, and obviously the recourse for your tax dollars is, or the consequences are quite significant. So it's a significant endeavor. We get and respect that, but there's not risk on our side for those forecasts other than if we fail to meet them.
Charles, any final comments from SFA? We want to thank you all for being here tonight. Hope you learned more about this. It's going to be online, so you can see tomorrow it'll be there. So if you want to go to the city's website, you'll be able to see all the information that they've shared with us tonight. Some of the numbers you couldn't see up here, but those are all in that report. And again, on behalf of the City Council, we want to thank you all for being here tonight, and we are adjourned. Good job.